thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I am your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is Mike Van de Bogart.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Locations Unknown. We have a great episode for you today, episode 10 actually. Before we get into the episode, we've got a couple updates. First, I'd like to thank everybody who's been emailing us and contacting us with comments, constructive criticism. We have a thick skin, so we can take it, and we read every email we get, and Joe and I are new at this, so we never did podcasting before this, so we appreciate all the feedback. Like I said, we can take it, so don't hold back on us. We also like praise.
I take it as a sign that people are actually listening.
Second point, we've got an exciting update on a case we did a couple months ago on Arvin Nelson. We've actually been in contact with a couple of people that have known Arvin for a long time, 30 plus years, and we're still kind of working out the details, but we're hopeful that we might be able to get them on a live interview for a follow-up show on Arvin. So this would be really cool. They're going to set the record straight on some of the facts that we mentioned in the episode. And I think we might learn a lot of new details about Arvin that aren't out there in the public.
Yeah, there were some things reported in newspapers that were a little bit different from what they said. So it'll be really nice kind of hearing it from the horse's mouth of people that were very close and good friends with Arvin for many years.
Also, I'd like to mention that Joe and I are taking a little bit of a summer break here after this episode. We've been shockingly doing this since December now. You know, our summers are getting pretty busy. Joe just got back from Colorado, and I'm heading out to Alaska later in the summer. So don't fret. We're not going away. We're just taking a break, and we'll be back sometime mid-September.
Yeah, it'll give us some time to put together some really great cases and do a lot more research on them before we do the recording. So it'll be good.
Before we get into this latest episode, you were out in Colorado this last weekend attempting to summit Capitol Peak. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did, what happened?
Sure. Yeah, it was my second attempt at Capitol Peak, and if anyone follows us on Facebook, you have seen the videos. They loaded simultaneously, but I recorded them at different times. It's just I didn't have internet, and all of a sudden they uploaded when I got back into town. But yeah, we were going out to summit Capitol Peak. We were making great time up to Moon Lake. By the time we got up there, we met a gentleman who was actually coming out that had full ice gear, and there was a lot of avalanches from the snow. So unfortunately, we were unable to summit. It was a beautiful hike, and I know as we have said on the show before, Mike, we're not idiots when it comes to what we do in the backcountry. No. So I wasn't about to take a risk with people with some deep snow drifts and avalanche stuff going on. So it was a wonderful trip, beautiful hike. So if you're in the Snowmass Aspen area, I highly recommend doing the Capitol Peak hike. Even if you're not a climber, hike up to Moon Lake. It was gorgeous.
Nice.
Very well worth the trip.
Now, do you plan to try to summit again in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go like late in the summer next year.
Yeah.
Where and I'll plan a bunch of extra days so I could stay at base camp many days to make sure I get a summit, because that's one of the ones I've wanted very badly over the last couple of years now. So hopefully third time's the charm.
And how many people did you go with this time?
This time it was just with two other people that were with me on the first trip. Really the whole point behind it was for us, when we didn't summit last time, we were ready to drive back the next weekend.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have a family, yeah, I would have. But this, life gets in the way. So I waited about a year and a half. But I'm thinking next year, my main focus will be getting a date to summit this mountain.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it. Maybe I'll be able to join in next year. That one stretch heading to the summit, Knife's Edge, I believe it's called.
Yes, it is.
It sounds terrifying and amazing at the same time.
Exactly. That's why I want to do that one. Yeah, you're basically on a knife's edge for like the last few hundred yards or whatever. So
I watched a few YouTube videos, and it looks like on one side you have a sheer rock drop off for thousands of feet, and then on the other side you've got, like a boulder field that goes down, I don't know, 800, 1,000 feet.
yeah, pretty much.
And you're kind of just straddling just a little chunk of rock for 100 yards,
yeah,
150 yards.
Yeah, it's all like crumbling slate too.
Yeah.
So
Just absolutely terrifying.
yeah, it'll be awesome. It'll be great.
Or are you going to try and use it with ropes? I know I saw some people.
Yeah, I think we'll belay. We brought equipment up there this time. We didn't have any ice gear. That's why we didn't even attempt it.
Yeah.
But I'm not an idiot. And, we don't need to lose both hosts of the show. So if we both do it next year.
Yeah. Who would
least
carry
one
the
of us
torch
might.
on?
Yeah, nobody. Nobody would care.
Yeah. Oh, well, on that depressing note, Joe, why don't you mention the sponsor of this episode?
Yeah. Yes, a special thanks to Verger CBD Products for sponsoring the show, as always. You can go on to vergermed.com and pick up their products. They've been adding new products every week, it seems like. So they have a bunch of new chocolate bars out. One of my favorites is a huckleberry chocolate, which there's not a lot of people I found out that like a fruity chocolate, but I love it. So they have like dark chocolates, milk chocolates, this huckleberry. They have sugar-free. So their chocolate products have been really good for me. And then their baked goods are just coming out now. I don't know if they're available online. But go check them out. It's Verger CBD Products. That's vergermed.com. VERDUREMED.com. July 2nd, 1938. 4-year-old Alfred Beilhartz is camping with family and friends in Rocky Mountain National Park. Alfred and his father went to the nearby Fall River to bathe and prepare for the start of their day. When Alfred ran off to spend time with other campers in their party, he was never seen again. With sightings on Devil's Nest by hikers, river waters diverted, a reservoir drained and no body recovered. Join us this week as we cover the mysterious disappearance of the young boy and what could have happened to him. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
Fall River is a 17.1 mile-long tributary of the Big Thompson River in Larimer County, Colorado. The river's source is near the Alpine Visitors Center in Rocky Mountain National Park. It flows down a canyon and over Chasm Falls before a confluence with the Big Thompson River in Estes Park.
So basically they're camping on the side of a portion of this like river network.
Yeah.
Just after a waterfall. So that sounds like I looked at a couple of pictures. It looks pretty. Chasm Falls looks pretty cool. So it looks like a sweet spot to go camping at.
This area of Fall River is located kind of in the center of Rocky Mountain National Park. This park was founded quite a long time ago, January 26, 1915, by President Woodrow Wilson. It's a pretty popular park. In 2017, they had over 4.4 million visitors in the park. This was its second highest annual visitation. Interesting facts about the park. People have been visiting this park for a very long time. Records go back to 11,000 years where projectile points have been found that are believed to have been used to hunt mammoths. So just picture, these giant hairy elephants walking around in Rocky Mountain National Park and kind of early hunters, throwing spears at them.
I was gonna say they're taking them down with arrows and spears and stuff. That's insane because they're so big. I mean, even think about like trying to get an elephant now with like a spear.
Right.
How much effort it would take.
This park has been visited for thousands of years. It's your, typical alpine climate. The highs in the upper 60s in July to the lows in the teens during the winter months. Now, Joe, Capitol Peak, is that in Rocky Mountain National Park?
No, it's It's south of it quite a ways. So the capital is on BLM land just outside of Aspen.
From what I read about Capitol Peak, it sounds like they do experience extreme weather.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was there and at the foot, it was about 95. It was the hottest day of the year when we got there.
Wow.
And a week before then, the mountains got 2 feet of snow.
Wow.
So like it was blizzard. That's why there were all the avalanches and stuff.
Yeah. So, Rocky Mountain National Park has a similar type of a reputation for extreme weather events. They've got a lot of complex interactions with elevations and slopes going on. It causes a lot of moisture to form over the park. And you've got a lot of different air masses meeting. You've got warm, moist air from the south meeting kind of Arctic cold air masses from the north. A lot of extreme weather, extreme snow events. In the summer, anybody who's been hiking in the mountains knows that it can go from the 90s to, thunder snow even sometimes, depending on elevation. So you got to be prepared for everything.
Yeah, and if you look at the location of the state and even that park, it's almost like in the center of the country to where like the Great Plains are, and then you have like the desert below it, and like it's almost like an area right in the middle where just stuff would all mix together. So you get that really weird mix of weather.
Yeah. So animals in the park, this will play a factor in our case in a little bit, but there's quite a few predators in the park. You've got Canadian lynx, foxes, bobcats, cougars, black bears, and coyotes. The one animal that's missing from the park is grizzlies, and they were removed from the park in the early 1900s. So no grizzlies, but you still got a lot of predators in the park.
Especially for small children.
Yep.
The mountain lions and the cats in the area are really a big concern.
Yeah. Highest elevation in the park is Long's Peak at 14,200 feet. I believe there's over 124 named peaks and at least 8,700 feet. So a lot of mountains. Great place to go hiking and climbing.
Oh, I want to move there. Every time I go there, I'm like, all right, time to stay.
Yeah, just live out in the woods.
Yeah, I would.
So besides animals, the biggest dangers for people is going to be exposure. And this is pretty common at any alpine region. With that many peaks at that high of an elevation, you're going to have a lot of exposed areas above the tree line. You're going to be exposed to an environment that has less oxygen than you're used to. Winds, cold temps, lots of precipitation. So it's a pretty dangerous environment. It can also be, pretty nice if you catch it at the right time. You just got to keep an eye in the sky because you get up there, there's nowhere to take shelter above the tree line.
Yeah, once you're at Alpine, it's game over if you're in a storm.
Yeah, and one of the other big killers when people go up in elevation is altitude sickness. So besides exposure, some people really succumb to altitude sickness a lot easier than others. So that's something you also have to watch out for. So that is kind of a quick overview of the park. Joe is now going to kind of go into a character profile and a timeline.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Alfred and then go into the story. So this being such an old case, we don't have the minute times, but they did keep decent records on the dates and kind of what happened. So it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show, but that's fine. For those of you that have short commutes, they get mad that we've got a couple of those letters that they want the show to match their commute exactly. I apologize that we can't match everybody's commute time for our show. So Alfred Beilhartz was a young male. He was, they said 3 or 4, but the more research I did, everyone seems to really focus on that he was 4 at the time of the disappearance. Would be 84 today. White male, blonde hair. We have a couple pictures we'll post. It will be on one of the covers, just a photo of him. From that era, it's black and white, so you really can't tell, but he looks like a little 4-year-old boy, basically. July 2nd. So the family and friends, it's a big group of people. It was the Beilhartzes and then a couple people that aren't directly related, but they're family friends that went on this camping trip. It was stated through multiple sources that Alfred went up to Fall River with his father, who was William Beilhartz, to bathe. So this is like the morning. They just woke up, and their party friends who came with, Orrin Bronson and Walter Hansen, were both in the camping party. They went upstream to bathe as well. However, they went about 500 feet upstream. So they were just a little separated from where Alfred and his father were.
Yeah.
So from all the sources we've read, it seems as though Alfred's father finished and was heading back to camp, and Alfred wanted to keep playing by the river, so he went up by the other men that were upstream. Again, this is about 500 feet. So within, eye shot, you should be able to see it.
Yeah.
The issue was Orrin and Walter. Now, these are the two friends that were also bathing upstream. They returned to camp without Alfred. So as soon as they got back to camp, everyone realized he's not there, and they went into panic mode, just as you would if you were missing your 4-year-old, especially next to a stream.
Yeah.
So the family started searching immediately, frantically, and turned up nothing. So when they couldn't find him immediately, they contacted the ranger at Fall River Ranger Station. His name was Muma, and I couldn't find if that was his first or last name. I'm guessing it's the last name. It's Ranger Muma.
Yeah.
So that's Moomaw. So Muma activated the Civilian Conservation Corps. We're calling them the CCC or CCC. And when I was reading through this, I was actually amazed because this is the 30s. The amount of time they were able to get people together was fascinating. So within 45 minutes, there's an estimated 100 CCC enrollees searching under the leadership of Muma and the chief ranger, Barton Hirschler. So they got 100 people together, the chief ranger together, and they already start searching in under an hour in the 30s. It's not like they could call people up on their cell phones or things like that. So it was pretty incredible. They were in luck, though, and this was a pretty cool tidbit. So there's a guy by the name of W.C. Hilgedick. He was a chief radio engineer for all of the National Park Service. He happened to be at the park at that time. And he helped the teams establish communication via shortwave radio. And this was like a brand new invention at the time. So, I mean, this is like a new thing, like to have radios and communicate.
So this was at the time, a revolutionary technology that we'd compare to probably some type of drone technology today.
Oh, yeah. Or I would say compared to like that heat signature stuff that they use in the things to like find heat and differential. So we talked about that with Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
Like how it'll just snap photos and the computer runs an algorithm to look for anomalies that aren't part of nature. So like for them, it was these radios so the teams could communicate. And the radios were so large, they had to be carried on the backs of the people using them. So think about like Saving Private Ryan when they're trying to communicate in the front.
Yep.
And they have that guy whose his only job is to be,
guy.
Yeah, he's just the radio guy because it's so huge. So they're using these in the park. So they were able again to assemble this massive team in under an hour. And then the guy who's the new chief radio engineer for the entire park service happens to be there as well. So they had a lot of stuff.
Very coincidental.
It's very coincidental, and they had a lot of good stuff going for them. So you feel like if he was there, like there would have been early success.
Yeah.
However, they had all these people. There was no finding the boy at all. So now we're fast forwarding July 4th. So this is a couple days later after the search is still ongoing. They started adding bloodhounds to the search. So they went to the local state penitentiary and got 50 fresh CCC members, and they still uncovered nothing. So now we have upwards of 150 people searching. Dogs are now involved. So we're going to go to July 5th now. And this is where they started taking really drastic measures.
Yeah.
They actually diverted the river that was feeding the main river, and they dragged the entire thing. So they basically stopped the flow of water and dragged every inch of the river because at this point they're thinking they're on a recovery mission.
Yeah.
And they got nothing. They also had the teams deeply search the woods and brush within a 10-mile radius. So now you have, 3 days of pretty intense activity going on in a small area. And we'll always go back to, this is a 4-year-old boy. So it's not like if he's in the river, you think of the worst thing, he drowns or he gets swept downstream. They're dragging and they're pulling up everything. They're not finding his body. They're searching the immediate area. They're not coming up with anything. So they're doing this over several days and nothing. They're not finding anything at all.
Yeah.
So the next major timeline is now on July 11th. So at this time is when they really started dwindling the team. So they had about 12 people only still searching the area. So they're starting to basically give up on this. And then it seemed like the last-ditch effort was July 12th. And Cascade Dam Reservoir, which sits 2 miles below the confluence of Roaring River and Fall River, was drained entirely. So basically what they did was they dragged all the water, couldn't find anything. So they said, okay, maybe he drowned and made it all the way downstream.
Yeah.
They drained the entire reservoir. So they weren't even going to drag it. They drained it so they could see everything and could not find the boy.
Wow.
So I mean, think about like you think it was in the 30s, the amount of stuff they did in 10 days was incredible.
Yeah. No, and it really helped that they had, a lot of those guys from the CCC just in the park. So that, they were very fortunate to have that kind of manpower that quickly, which is shocking that they were able to assemble that many people that fast and they still weren't able to find anything.
Yeah, and that's where I think this really makes the books about being such a weird disappearance is. We talk about this a lot. It strikes me similar to the case that we just did last time, how he disappeared in like such a short window.
Carl.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of the same thing. Like, yes, he's a small boy, but it was such a short window. So this 10-day search gained national attention and even the eye of the FBI because they started thinking, okay, maybe this is a kidnapping.
Yeah, and when I read it, the eye of the FBI, I actually had to Google. For some reason, I thought the FBI hadn't been, created yet, but I was wrong.
Like early, what year was it?
It was like, I want to say it was like 1919.
Okay, so I mean, it's only 12, 15 years old then at this point.
I am going to search it quickly because I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's very
1908.
1908. Okay,
yeah.
So it's still fairly new.
For some reason, I thought the FBI was created in the 50s, but
that's probably when they started getting shady. Great. Now we're on a list. Yeah, now we're on a list.
You're on the list. Not me.
You're like, I like America.
I like them.
Yeah. So, oh man. So anyway, the FBI, which are great and they help everybody, they join in and they because they think it's related to potentially a kidnapping or something. So they're coming in and lending a hand, which again gives more, firepower behind this effort. So there's a couple of things I didn't throw into the timeline, but I want to throw in now after we kind of went through. So that timeline followed, okay, that Alfred went missing. A lot of people are thinking it's a drowning.
Yeah.
So they're focusing a lot on the water. But then this tidbit kind of comes in after, which changes things up a little bit. So a day after he disappeared, so this is the July 3rd,
yep.
A couple hiking about 6 miles away from the Beilhartz camp. And this is again about 2,500 to 3,500 feet of elevation higher than what their camp is. They reported seeing a boy who looked like Alfred sitting on a high ridge in a treacherous area called Devil's Nest near the top of Mount Champlain. The boy was gone.
This was just creepy. I was just picturing myself, walking down a trail kind of, towards the summit. And, off in the distance, you hear this crying child like 3,000 feet above you, like way off on this ledge. And in an area that is very dangerous. And it would just be the creepiest, like only thing you can make it creepier is like a full moon and like fog rolling in.
Yeah, if it was night, like that'd be the worst. But this hiking couple said they walked far up the Old River Road until they became tired. They said they stopped to rest, and then looking far up the mountainside is when they saw the boy sitting on a rock. So they quickly climbed up to where they saw the boy, like hopefully any good person would do, and say like, wow, there's a little kid up there.
Yeah.
But by the time they got there, he had disappeared. So they expressed belief that no child could have reached that spot without assistance. So you think of like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Like they don't do very hard stuff. So if there's people listening that don't have kids, I have a lot of them. I always say like they will wander, but they're like they don't wander up mountains.
They take the path of least resistance.
Exactly. They look at things that are interesting. They'll like try and climb stuff, maybe fall. They kind of go in circles. They don't beeline. And again, this is 6 miles from where they were. So that leads to, and there were no
35 feet up, 3,500 feet up too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that elevation gain is incredible. And it's an entire day later. And, remember, that's a day and a half to 2 days of 100 people like shouting his name, looking for him in a 10-mile radius. So well beyond that short distance. And he would have come out if that was him. But then that leads you to believe, what boy was that? If that's not Alfred, there's another young boy that was missing that wasn't reported. So it's either that was Alfred, or it wasn't, or it was something else that's unexplainable.
Unexplainable, or maybe the people hiking, maybe what they thought was a cry was maybe some type of bird or something. And
yeah, maybe, but they still saw him.
Yeah,
and
that's
what
true.
gets me is they saw him and tried going to him, and then by the time they were able to get up there, he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, that's puzzling. I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. I would lean on the thought of they saw something, they thought it was a child, but it was something else. Like, I'm not saying something else like,
like
Bigfoot
maybe
or
like
something.
a big bird or something that kind of looked
some
like
type
one,
of,
and they mistook it for something else.
Yeah, and it made us, it made a sound, and it kind of sounded like somebody crying, and maybe they were far enough away you couldn't, you're not going to be able to get
if it was
great
getting
look
later
at
in the day, and I only am thinking about this just because I was just hiking to where
Yeah.
we got to our base and literally turned around and went back to the car, and we weren't planning to. So by the time we were getting towards the end of the hike, I'd been moving for about 9 hours straight. It was getting dark out. I was exhausted. I was dehydrated.
Yeah.
And you start seeing like wood from far away that like kind of looks like a face, like things like that. So you start seeing things that like aren't necessarily real. So maybe it was something like that, where maybe like you said, they heard a bird cry, and they look up and they see something that looks like a child, but maybe as you get closer, it doesn't.
Yeah.
To the point where like, oh, that child is gone.
I mean, when I was in the Tetons, towards the end of our hike, the first day, we were tired, and every like turned, log I saw off in the distance, I thought was like a grizzly. So I can understand, seeing something, and once you get closer, you're like, oh, it's a log. I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and then there's another tidbit that they put in that again that led them towards thinking now maybe this is a kidnapping. Was they found a bandage in a nearby cabin, and why that's significant is Alfred was given a bandage that it was similar to it because he had a blister on his foot from walking. So they found this bandage, and R.D. Brown, he's the chief of the FBI field office in the area, so he's the one that came out to represent the FBI.
Yeah.
He said the bandage was taken and was going to be examined microscopically and compared to bandages the mother was carrying, and nothing conclusive was found. The mother swears that it was the same one, but they basically did like a match comparison to the bandages that group was carrying to see if it was similar.
Yeah.
And they couldn't definitively say whether it was or not.
And, it's crazy because of the time this happened in.
Well, that's what makes you think is like, is it, you can't even say faulty science. There wasn't forensic science really.
There's no DNA back then.
Yeah, there's not anything that we have now. So, I mean, were they just not advanced enough at that point in time to determine it to where they're just comparing fibers under a microscope to see if they're the same?
Yeah, that's the thing I'm kind of going towards is, yeah, they can look, at the bandage under a microscope and see if it, looks similar to other bandages, but they can't
see
test
if it's the same brand or something, or
they can't test any of the
style.
blood on the bandage for DNA. Today they probably could test the blood and then take a sample from the parents, and I'm sure they could probably come to a reasonable
That just made me think if they still had the bandage, they could probably test it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then find a Beilhartz family member that's still alive, and just, you can tell if it's a DNA match.
But that it is just kind of not funny, but it's just, the 30s, that's really the most, they could do is just see if the bandage was manufactured the same as the other bandages.
Top of the line science. Let's look at this thing under a microscope and see if it matches the fibers. Like that was it. That was like that's what the FBI was doing. That's the best you could do. Local police departments probably couldn't even do that. Just have a microscope. Yeah. If you think about it, it's the 30s. Like it was tough back then, but compared to earlier, it's even tougher. So, I mean, they just keep getting better and better. So the last tidbit that came in, and what's really neat, Mike, is I found a ton of these newspaper clippings. So like the actual stories from the newspaper. Yeah. So we have those with the case material. We'll put those on the website. But 4 months after the disappearance, the parents actually received a ransom note asking for $500 and say the boy was alive. So that they equated that to like $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 today, which still seems like a very small amount of money. Yeah. So investigators at that point determined it was a hoax, and it never went anywhere from there. But the father and the mother were adamant that he didn't drown. Yeah. And that he was kidnapped, but they kind of left it at that.
So some opportunistic person saw a way to make a buck, and like, I'm going to leave a note. And
yeah, it's like either a sick joke or like an opportunistic person. Like, maybe I can make a quick buck off of these people. And which is really terrible to think about. But
That's a theme kind of throughout all these cases. The families always, while drowning, animal attack, those kinds of things are probably the most logical explanation. People closest to the people who've gone missing like to think that, maybe it was a kidnapping or some type of foul play. You never want to, you always, I think maybe they say, kidnapping to hold out hope that maybe Alfred is still alive.
Well, I wonder if it's like, if I can psychoanalyze without having a degree or any experience in that field. But I just want to say, like, if I think about it in that regard of, if it happened to me, it'd be extremely terrible. I almost wonder if you hope that that's the case because you feel less at fault. Because if one of my kids drowned in a river because I made one little mistake or like looked away, like that's on me. Yeah. Versus versus if somebody were to kidnap them, that's still on you, but it's kind of like someone else was involved versus it's not 100% your fault. And again, I'm speculating here because if someone came up and took my kid and was opportunistic when I wasn't looking, I would still beat myself up to the day I died if I couldn't get him back. I would, but it would be in a weird way, not as bad as if I turned my back and they drowned. Yeah. I feel like that would be 100 times worse because I'm in 100% control of that situation.
Yeah. I only mention that because we've done enough cases now where a lot of the cases, the loved ones always suspect something more sinister, something, foul play, kidnapping, even though probably in a lot of these cases, the most likely explanation is injury, getting lost, animal attack,
just coming to exposure over time, especially for the young kids,
things like that. And it's just interesting. I maybe it's just a part of human psychology that people, want to believe it, something like that. So they hold out hope. They need an
answer. They need closure of some point, and just getting he must have drowned, but there's no proof.
Yeah.
Between the two, it's almost like you said, maybe if he's kidnapped, there's still a possibility he's alive. So if that's like the way the brain moves to hold on hope and grasp onto that, well, maybe he's okay. Maybe again, it's kind of like a weird thing. That would be good if he was kidnapped and still alive because drowning is done. He's actually dead. So if you think he's been kidnapped, you can still cope with the fact that he's alive somewhere.
Yeah, and the only reason why I even bring that up is because there does seem to be some type of common thread in a lot of these cases.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've read that family members close to the person that went missing believe something else happened than what the logical theory is or what the official theory is. So that's all I was bringing up, and I find it interesting that time and again we see that same kind of thing happening.
Sure.
Where I guess I'll get into the official theories here for Alfred, but it's now that we've done enough of these, we can kind of start to see kind of commonalities between each case. A main commonality I see is, lack of preparation, not taking the wilderness serious enough.
Yeah, the proper precautions, especially for I think the biggest one is river crossings in general.
Yep.
Especially now, this isn't relevant to this case per se, but I was even thinking about this when I was out hiking. Every time we cross even a creek that's moving swiftly.
Yeah.
I unbuckle my backpack instinctively every time. I take everything off in case I go in, because there's a lot of stories of, you might be able to swim even with a current.
Yeah.
But you get a 30-pound bag on your back that starts getting waterlogged, and hiking backpacks are clipped to you in 4 different spots sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That can pull you under, and then in a panic, you might not be able to undo it, and you could just drown trying to get out of your backpack.
Yeah.
So it's where it's I'm a pretty seasoned hiker. So are you. I either unclip it and put it on one shoulder, or I carry it in my hand. I don't ever have it on my back for reasons of I don't trust it. And that could be in 2 feet of water that's moving swiftly. I don't care. And I think a lot of people I've played in rivers before, but it's completely different when you're out there and in a mountain where you don't know if there's a deep spot, if it's, right now it's spring, summer, so there's a lot of mountain runoff. So at that time, if there's a lot of rainfall and the river is moving really swiftly, that could have been the thing that did it. You're going in there to take a bath, and maybe normally the river's calm. You've been there before, but maybe it rained a couple days beforehand and you're still having that high flow rate. So water's, super powerful, and you have to take it seriously when you're out in backcountry.
Yeah, and I mean, a 4-year-old is not going to be able to put up any kind of fight against, a river if they get into a river that's, flowing too fast.
Well, yeah, a river that's 2 feet deep might be half his body height or more right there.
So that'll segue us right into the official theory. Official theory from the authorities was Alfred drowned.
Which I would argue makes the most sense. It really does. They lost him at the river. They were all at the river, and they can't find him there.
And I've got kind of a theory on why nothing was found. I'll get into that in a minute.
All right.
Ranger Mumaw was very disturbed by this disappearance and later wrote about it in a book called Recollections of a Rocky Mountain Ranger. He conducted somewhat of an experiment in which he filled a gunny sack with rags and enough stones to give it the weight of a small boy. He tossed the sack into the stream where the boy was last seen. He recounted that he had to run very fast to keep it in sight until it reached Fall River, and then it disappeared under an overhanging bank. He had workers on that section for days, and none of them could recover the sack.
So that was actually a pretty genius idea for the 30s of, let's see how the river's working and moving. And so the river's strong enough that it's carrying a sack that has rocks in it downstream.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
That's a pretty fast moving river. And, I think this is one of the first cases where I kind of agree with the official theory.
Yeah, and I'd argue that experiment alone kind of changed my mind.
One of the reasons why I think maybe nothing was found was, I think, a couple of reasons. So when we talked to the chief search and rescue guy in Colorado in episode 3, he was kind of talking to us about how sophisticated search and rescue operations are now, and that really that sophistication didn't start happening until probably the 70s. Now we're going all the way back to the 30s. So yeah, they have a lot of manpower out in the woods, but the Civilian Conservation Corps, you got to remember what that was. That basically was a group of unemployed, unmarried men that couldn't find work. So the government basically said, come with us. We need trails made. We need, logs cut. We need all this work done out, in the national parks, and we'll pay you guys. These people are not trained in search and rescue.
So it's less of look at it as manpower covering the area, more of aimless wandering of a giant crowd.
Yeah, I would say, it's more compared to
I don't want to take a hit on these people because they're out there doing it. I'm sure they're trying their best, but you still need organization. You can't just drop a bunch of people in an area and say, go nuts. You want to make sure that someone's with a map doing a grid pattern to say, okay, this area was searched by team this. Now this team move a mile west. And you have this communication that it's a big consorted effort of teams going on the ground and teams watching the map and all this coordination. And they had just got shortwave radio.
So they really have no technology. There's no one in the sky, no airplanes surveying the area. They've got, 150 guys that are not skilled in search and rescue. I don't even at this time in the 30s, search and rescue really wasn't, it wasn't
not a thing at all.
It wasn't a thing at all. It was just people. If someone went missing, they would get a bunch of people together. They go out in the woods and they'd, stomp around and look. And if you got lucky, you would maybe find the remains or find them.
Kind of like before fire departments, they just had bucket brigades, make a line and carry water, in a line. And that's how they fought fires, how they've searched people is someone's missing, get the word out, and everyone show up at this spot.
And so the one thing they did have was bloodhounds from the local jail. But again, when we talked to the search and rescue officer from Colorado, he said, if the area gets contaminated before they bring the bloodhounds in, there's no way those dogs are going to be able to get a sense of this kid.
Which maybe 150 dudes trampling around the woods might just do that.
Exactly. So in modern search and rescue operations, one of the things they do is they make sure not to disturb the search area before they get these canines in there, because they need, a bunch of people stomping around, disturbing the ground, leaving scent all over the place. It's going to be harder for those dogs to track. And I just can't imagine back in the 30s, they probably just brought the dogs in. They're like, all right, let's just, here's this. They probably gave like a sock or something and like sent them off. So there was probably.
So now you just turn around my whole excited, wow, they amassed all these people to wait, they blew it.
No, I still think it's impressive. Yeah, I still think it's impressive that they were able to get that many people out into the woods in such a short time period to start, like they always say, the first 12 hours, first 24 hours in a missing person case is probably the most important and vital, especially if you're trying to find someone still alive. So the fact that they were able to get those people out there that fast,
and I will say it a million times. I don't care if people are sick of me saying it. He was 4 years old. How far could they have gone? Yep. And that's also, I think, plays credence into the drowning and swept away by the river, because if he wasn't in the river, even if they're doing it wrong in that short window with that many people in that small of an area, they should have been able to find him. The thing that throws me off is the things they did to the river that they would never do today, even if someone was missing, because of disturbing the ecosystem. They shut entire rivers off and diverted rivers and dragged them, and they're pulling crap out. That still shocks me that they weren't even to find him then. Because even when he conducted his test, it's not like they were doing all that stuff again. They couldn't find the sack. It's probably at the bottom of the river somewhere to this day. There's some sack sitting there, in the current. But I mean, they were diverting rivers, draining things out, dragging everything and trying to find, and they didn't come up with anything. So that really got me too, is did this kid did his body end up in some strainer point that was so deep or so in this spot that just no one found it?
Yeah, I honestly think drowning is probably the most logical explanation. I would say the second explanation would be maybe an animal attack, but
that's what I was thinking too, a mountain lion or something, because the size of him and him being by himself. I mean,
there's bears in the park too, so that many people stomping around that quickly, I think you would have seen.
Yeah, and they would have scared them all off. I mean, let's be honest, they would have
scared them off, or they would have seen the remains, or they would have seen signs of an animal attack that fast. It was summer.
No,
there was no
I'm
snow
with
on
you.
the ground. So yeah, I think an animal attack, while not likely, is still, I think, in the mix for what could have happened.
Yeah, it's possible, but highly unlikely compared to what was happening.
I'm going to rule out.
So what are your thoughts on the hiking couple that saw the boy at Devil's Nest?
I honestly think, because it's happened to me. You're out in the woods. You've been hiking all day. You're tired. You might be a little dehydrated.
You just see kids crying.
You're up at elevation. Not necessarily.
I know.
Yeah, I think you sometimes even hear stuff that isn't really there. I still think they probably heard a bird or maybe it was some type of rodent or something making a noise up there. And I mean, even rock formations at a distance look like.
Well, and that's why I said I'd love to know, and I couldn't find if they saw him at dusk or at a point in the day where it's low light. Because as soon as light gets just a little bit, as soon as the sun goes down just a tiny bit, you start seeing all sorts of stuff. And
isn't that called confirmation bias, or what's the term? These people knew this kid was missing, so you're kind of looking.
Yeah,
you're kind of looking for it.
It's like a red herring almost. They heard about the kid, and they're also in the area, and they're like, oh, "Is that a kid up there?"
I'm sure we'll get an email letting us know
that we said the wrong, whatever the heck it is.
What I think maybe these people.
Hold on, Mike. I think you were right. Nobody can yell at you. Confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories.
There you go. I knew it was.
I could skew that to be the thing that you said.
So I think it's plausible to think these people knew Alfred was hiking in the area and went missing. They're out there. Let's assume, because we don't know, so let's just assume it's later in the day. They've been hiking all day. They hear this noise of what is probably an animal, and they see something off in the distance. Maybe it's a rock formation or a fallen log or something, and they mistake it for Alfred. Because how could you climb up there and not find anything from him. I mean, if, like you said, a 4-year-old, first of all, how did a 4-year-old get up there?
Yeah, and if he's going to run away, is he going to be making noise still or
if
whatever?
He's up there somehow, he's not going anywhere. He would still be up there as soon as they climbed to find him. And if he was dragged up there by an animal, you would find blood or, some type of evidence that an animal dragged him up there. So I think those people didn't actually see him.
Okay.
That's my theory.
I think I'm with you on that one. I think
he drowned. I think, unfortunately, they were bathing in the river, and he was probably, the dad was fine because he's a full-grown adult, but I think the river was probably too strong for a toddler.
Well, and it's probably, I'm just trying to picture, like, they both got out, and said he wanted to go back in the river, and he's like, oh, run up by William or run up there and go with those guys. And instead of walking them there and saying, hey, is it okay if I leave Alfred with you, and getting confirmation, he just went back to camp and saw his son running towards him, thinking, oh, why wouldn't he go right there? Maybe he just went right back in the river in the same spot where he just was with his dad.
Yeah.
And then got swept away there. So because that's the thing too, the other guys came back to camp, and it was like they had no idea Alfred was even there.
Yeah.
So like that tends to tell me that Alfred never even went by them, because they wouldn't leave him alone.
No,
and I'm
going to rule out, I don't think kidnapping is...
I agree. I don't think there's enough people in the park.
No, and I think the probability of him drowning is so high that I just don't see kidnapping, even though we had that hoax letter. I just can't see that being a real possibility.
Yeah, especially because in the newspaper clippings, you have the mom and the dad saying that they think it's kidnapping. So you just have some sick bastard just in town like, you know what? All right, it is. I'm going to send a letter to the parents and say I have him, and try and extort them for money, which is awful, but there's some sick people out there. So
you got to remember too, this was, the Great Depression was still going on. People were, hard for money. Probably 1938. I mean, the Great Depression had been going on for a while. People are probably desperate to get money any way possible. I mean, this guy maybe who wrote the hoax letter probably, maybe it was as innocent as like, I just need to get food for my family. I don't care how I do it now. I just need the money. So I think
that plays I think that plays a factor in it. All right. I think I'm with you. I think this is unanimous. I think it's unanimous for you, I, and the official theory. I think it's clear-cut drowning, and they just unfortunately could not recover the body.
Yeah, I think because of a lack of skilled search and rescue people at the time, I think that hindered their ability to locate evidence or the remains. Not to say that a team, a SAR operation could find the boy's body now, but I just feel like with the technology we have available now, and the fact that we have actual volunteers and paid search and rescue people that are trained to do this is what they do. That would lead to a better outcome today. So,
no, I'm in complete agreement. I think I am. I think it's drowning, and unfortunately, they just never got closure with recovering the body.
Yeah. So, once again, Joe, do you have anything else to add?
Nope.
Before we wrap it up?
Nope.
Once again, thanks for tuning in to episode 10 of the Locations Unknown podcast.
Yeah, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm gonna keep updating that LinkedIn page. I don't care. And,
I got to do more work on our Twitter account.
Do we have a Twitter?
We do.
Okay.
So
this is how you can tell that this is not our full-time job.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I know, depending on how many episodes you've listened to, Joe and I both have full-time jobs outside of this, and we've never done podcasting before Locations Unknown. We like hiking, and
I think they could tell that we've never done podcasting before. I think that one's blatantly obvious, but
Joe and I have been hiking for 10 years, and we've got a lot of experience in the backcountry, so we enjoy talking about it when these cases are very interesting. So
yeah,
we're not part of the media or anything like that.
No, God, we'd be fired in a day. That's why thank God for podcasts.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what anyone thinks.
And like we said at the beginning of the show, we are now going to be off for the remainder of July and August. Interesting fact about this case, Joe and I are recording this on 4th of July Eve. And this case happened over this week. many years ago. So
I didn't even think about that one. That's
I didn't either. Yeah, it's kind of interesting
serendipitous for sure.
So we'll see you guys again in September. We got a lot of new cases and we've got some cool new ideas we're batting around. So make sure to tune back in.